All right, guys, it says I am live, and I know that you'll tell me if you can hear me because you are awesome that way. And I am going to mention a few things as we get started. I have a raffle that I want to fill because I have some other really cool stuff that I want to show you guys, and I'll be able to do that here in a minute, maybe. Oh, I always click the wrong thing. Yeah, that's what I want to show. And you can hear me great. That is the best news. So this raffle is a gargoyle, and I had a thought, guys. It's really funny when people come on here and they go, these are evil things, and I had a thought today talking to my friend James Rohrback that if these items were if they had a spell on them just because it has a gargoyle or an owl, I can tell you I'm not doing that to them, and I'd be really shocked if the owners of my company were casting spells over the silver, but I can tell you if they were, it would be over all of the silver and not just the owls and the gargoyles, right? So like, I'm pretty sure it's not cursed. I've never had that feeling that any of my silver is cursed. It's an image on a piece of silver that is actual silver, so it's real money. It can be melted, it can be kept. It's a beautiful design. And I have this as a raffle right now. It's, what did I say it was? $8 a spot. What did I say? $8 a spot. So it's pretty affordable for one spot or even a couple spots. But if this one doesn't fill, then I can't show you guys, or I can't start raffling off these other ones. And I have, I'll turn this light on. Try not to blind anybody. But I have these really cool, I put up a picture of them, right? Let's see here. I put up a picture of them. These Don't Tread on Me ones. Let's see, make sure you can see them without blinding you. These are 2 ounces. They're not small. They're big 2 ounces. And then I've got still another 2A that I can do. This is a Second Amendment round, and it's got the Second Amendment on the back. And while this is not pure silver, it's pretty cool. I thought I have 2 of these, so I thought I'd raffle one off with the Second Amendment round. So until that fills up for the gargoyle, I can't do that, right? So that is $8 a spot. You can pay it at PayPal at ladyliberty@countermail.com. Friends and family, please, because otherwise if you do goods and services, it holds it for 30 days. And I finally just got 2 holds off. Woo! And then Cash App is this Get Money thing that you see here. So that's all you got to do for that. And then I want to give a shout out again to Carter Hall, who has a new video up. And it's only 3 minutes. So I have Benz here. I'm going to let Ben say hi. Hi, Benz.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So I think that I have an echo for some reason now with your whatever you're using.
No, that's not an echo.
Oh.
I was listening in through another.
That'd be kind of like an echo then. So yeah, sorry for blinding you by the shiny,
Yeah,
with the
so
shiny
I
stuff,
had
guys.
heard.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying I had to turn the volume down, so I was sending a text to a friend.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if you don't mind, I was going to play this song really quick, but you guys, this is on his website. Nobody really, I asked some people to go and like and listen to his stuff. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to, but it's nice to just go view things and support people. And so I'm going to play it, but this is on his own page, and I'll share the link so that you guys can have it. And I'll probably also premiere it on mine at some point, but I'm going to play it because it's only 3 minutes, and then we'll get into the conversation. All right. All right.
Like a child's knuckles cracking on a daddy's face, and the lion sleeps in the day, comes out at dark to hunt his prey. I could hope for more, I could lead to you as you have been to me. I could raise my hands and bow my head at the awe of your mystery.
Wait, hold on,
All
hold
right,
on, hold on, hold
so
on, hold on,
oh,
hold on.
go ahead.
So my bad, guys. I turned my sound off for a second, so none of you guys heard me. What I just what I just said was that's great that he has his his daughter's here, and that's really exciting and cool. And Benz's daughter is in the chat. And then I said that I want to go over this stuff in a minute, but I'm going to have Benz tell a story about Reiki because he has a personal experience with that. And so he's going to tell that first. So go ahead. Now you know what I said, guys.
All right, so I learned how to do Reiki a couple of years ago. I was looking around at, I was watching all this stuff on the Gaia network, looking at whatever I could find
About what was going on, trying to figure things out. And I started looking into this idea about energy healing. And a while back, I had been in Arizona, and I went to this crystal shop. It was a crystal shop in Phoenix, and I went to one of the psychics there, and I just wanted to see what it was like. And she did a tarot reading on me, and an angel card reading, I believe. And then she kind of looked at me and to see what kind of person I was, and she said I'm the kind of guy that might be the type that would be like a Reiki master, or someone who would do Reiki. And I had never heard of that. I didn't know what it was, and so I ended up going to Fort Bliss, Texas, and I was there for a while. And while I was there, I found this studio that did Reiki lessons. I thought, you know what, I'll try it out. Let's see what happens. And so I ended up taking some of these classes and learning how to do Reiki. And so I didn't really practice it all that much, but I did a little bit. And there was this one guy, I went to a job fair at the base. We were setting up a job fair for the people who were getting out of the Army, something they could have an access to find a job to get out with. And one of the guys who was traveling around helping to set up the job fair as it went from place to place, I struck up a conversation with him, and we were talking about some stuff. I got onto, I was learning Reiki. He was talking about he had an injury somewhere. I said, well, I know Reiki, energy healing. You want me to try it out? And he was, at first he was he didn't really know what it was. And I said, well, I don't even touch you at all. It's just like an energy healing. He said, okay, I'll try it out. So I did a Reiki on, like a little Reiki session on him. And, ouch, loud noises. So I did a Reiki session on him, and I didn't touch him at all. The guys around him were standing around watching. They even said I didn't touch him at all. But the guy swears someone put a hand on his shoulder. And he said he felt a hand on his shoulder, felt the distinct impression that someone had put their hand on his shoulder. Now, I don't know what kind of being did it, but all the guys around swear that I did not touch him. And I definitely didn't have a hand on his, like anywhere near his shoulder. And the guy thought it was me, but all the guys around said, no, he didn't even touch you. He didn't even have a hand near there. And so it was just like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Looking back now, I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh my goodness, I don't know what that was. I don't know what put a hand on his shoulder. I have no idea. It could have been something good. It could have been something bad. And I don't know.
Right.
But that's kind of the story.
Right. So, okay. Now, before anyone I mean, I'm already got a thumbs down before anyone even knew what we were talking about, so that's cool. But before anyone, gets worried or upset, and just remember, sometimes your own personal offenses could be because you're hearing some truth you don't want to hear, but sometimes it isn't, right? So I'm not going to tell anyone that they should or should not be a part of any mixed martial arts or any kind of any martial arts for that matter. But I didn't need to watch any video on any kind of Illuminati or occult roots to be against mixed martial arts, because it's so violent. And boxing too. It's too violent. I don't want to watch people get knocked out. I don't want to watch people break each other's noses. There's been enough knockout deaths that have occurred. Just recently, a boxer died, and he's only in his 20s, and that happened to an MMA fighter not too long ago. Now, this video I have pulled up showed a bunch of... Yeah, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Was this the guy that they were talking about, he was hanging on for his life?
Yeah.
He just got out of an MMA match. He was hanging on.
Well, this was a boxer. It's like just a few days ago.
Oh, maybe it was a boxer. Yeah, some of the guys were actually talking about that. Some of the guys at work were talking. I remember hearing about that because I don't follow boxing. I don't
Neither do I.
Either. But I had heard about it. Some of the guys at work were talking about a guy who was hanging on for his life because he had just gotten out of a match and he was unconscious.
Yeah. Well, there he is. He was 27 years old, 27 club. Who knows? Maybe it was a ritual. But the point is, even if it's ritualistic, even if it's ritualistic, it's like, well, okay, we gotta look at what's really going on here. I mean, this is a violent sport. They get lots of head injuries. They have memory problems. They have Alzheimer's type of problems where they're taking all these Alzheimer's types of medications. And anyway, we have to say, I think it's a violent sport. I don't need to be told this is any kind of occult deal behind it to feel like I don't want any part to do with it. But what this video does, and I'm not going to make everybody watch a bunch of this video, but I'm going to show a couple things in it, like the occult roots a little bit. This video gets into a lot of deep stuff, and he's so good at bringing it to the Bible, guys. He quotes scripture and says, okay, guys, like, let's look at the scripture. But I'm going to show a few things, and then we'll just talk about it, because I know there's good questions to be asked about this, because if you've been a part of it, or you are a part of it, and you don't want to hear that you shouldn't be a part of it, we'll talk about that part, guys. So nobody get upset or leave in any kind of offense. I'm just gonna show this real quick, okay, Benz?
Go ahead.
How satanic that is. See, on the outside, it looks like, oh, they're just joking around, but they're letting you know it's Satanism involved, there's paganism involved. But I want you to watch these clips on the occult origin of the octagon. I want you to watch these clips on the significance of the octagon in the occult world. We'll be right back.
This symbol, the octagon symbol, is a really, really powerful symbol, because it's an energy portal that you can use to gain access into a new experience. So in this video, I just want to mention that symbols are information, language that is received instantly. You either resonate with that information that comes forth from a symbol or not. And sometimes the energy comes inside you and within your field, and you see instant results. And other times it takes a while. But either way, by the power of the shape of the symbol itself, there's an energy projection into your force field of light. So it's always wonderful to work with symbols. That's the reason why we create grids. Same thing. You release yourself from it and allow the beneficial energies by the power of your intention to allow things to start moving around, to shift energies around. So I really love symbols because they really are shortcuts. Sometimes you don't have to say so much, because the symbol itself, the energy of the symbol, your intention will always create what you need. So they're very, very wonderful tools that assist us in this process of learning the power of their voices, the essence that is coming from within them. And there was an octagon sign with a cross in the middle, just the way I have drawn this one. So this is really personal for me because it's a symbol that I saw in my dream. An octagon with a cross in the middle, and the people were toning, and the sounds were coming out. And as they made these tones with their voices, there was no additional instrument. As they made the tones, I can't remember what specific tone it was. I'm assuming it was the Om. When they made that sound, this cross in the middle opened up inward. And the next thing I knew, that the people who were toning were inside a new experience. Life had shifted, something had shifted. So at that point, I understood two things. Number one, that the octagon is truly an energy portal that truly has beneficial energies. And it can open up portals. It can shift the direction. It can move energy. It can open up our hearts. It can take us somewhere where we need to go.
It is therefore highly unlikely that there isn't an intimate connection between the 8-sided Great Pyramid of Giza and the 8-sided floor plan of the Dome of the Rock. Remembering, of course, that the Dome of the Rock is believed to be the original location of King Solomon's Temple. Researchers Graham Hancock and Robert Bubal, in their book Talisman, relate that the Knights Templar, who during the Crusades made their home inside the Dome of the Rock, adapted the octagonal shape into their famous Red Cross symbol. Down through the ages, the importance of the octagon encoded in the Great Pyramid of Giza has been saved and preserved in the fraternal organizations, the secret societies, and the mystery schools.
And interestingly enough, 8 links to the Large Hadron Collider. Yes, this monstrosity built in Geneva, Switzerland. That's about all freaky science, of course, but the problem is it could create a wormhole, a black hole. It could destroy the world. I'm actually more afraid of these people doing these experiments than any war.
Okay, so I'm only showing that for MMA fighting specifically, right? I'm not talking about other martial arts yet, but we will get there. But really, for me, it's super easy to, like I said before, even looking at some of this stuff, that MMA, mixed martial arts, is so violent that I'm not interested in it anyway. So to me, this isn't a big deal. I'm not upset about it, but you have to think about it and pray about it, of course. Is mixed martial arts something we should be supporting and rooting for these guys and saying, should a Christian be going into a ring and fighting like this and saying, I'm a Christian and I love Christ, but I'm going to go beat the crap out of somebody? Because there is a part where it's either Ronda Rousey or another female, I can't remember. I'm not going to show the whole video. You can watch it yourself. This guy has great videos, but where they say, if these people are going in with anger on purpose, and if they tell you that they're not, they're lying, because you have to have a level of anger to go into an MMC fight. And probably even a boxing match, because these are physical fighting. I'm not talking martial arts yet, right? Like, I'm not talking the regular martial arts that whether they're sparring or not. I'm not talking that yet, but where they have to have a certain amount of anger just to go into the ring. So have you ever been into mixed martial arts at all, Benz? Or been involved?
I have not. I've been in, combatives for Army. And that's kind of in itself is a kind of a mix between, jiu-jitsu and sambo. Sambo being Russian grappling and jiu-jitsu being, Brazilian grappling, I believe. So yeah, it's a totally different thing. It's the Army, modern Army combatives program, MACP as they call it.
All right, well, so I don't know if I just wanted to show that, because if anyone's really into, mixed martial arts and they think like this is something that they, want to be about, want to be a part of. And anyway, I can't remember what this guy was saying, so I'm going to play it for a second.
And God, right? So there are many MMA fighters out there and boxers that accredit their victory to God. They say after the victory, this victory goes out to God, or all glory to him. He's the one that got me through this victory. He's the one that got me in this position. A lot of fighters are famous for that, like Manny Pacquiao, Yoel Romero from UFC, and many, many more. And they accredit their victory to God. The question is it okay to beat people up for money to glorify God? I think the answer is obvious. You know, it is Jesus that said, "You have heard, thou shalt not kill." But if you hate someone in your heart, you've already killed. And we know that violence is a byproduct of hate. Well, you have just used the byproduct of hate, which is violence, to make yourself some money. Now, does that really glorify God? Does that bring glory to God? All this talk about fighters being competitors and things like that, where does the spirit of competition come from? Now, before we answer that question, let's go to Ezekiel 28. God was talking through Ezekiel to the king of Tyrus. He said, "You were the anointed cherub. You were in the Garden of Eden. You were perfect when you were created." So was God really talking to the king of Tyrus? Well, kind of. He was talking through the king of Tyrus to the one who was really in charge behind the scenes, and that is the devil, because he was the anointed cherub. He was the covering cherub. He was in the Garden of Eden. So where does the spirit of competition come from? Isaiah 14, starting from verse 12. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mounts of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." This whole idea of I'm going to be better than you. I can do this better than you. That whole competitive idea, that whole competitive spirit did not come from God. It originated from the devil himself. So should we have that same spirit? Should we have that same mentality just like the devil? No. And this is the reason why I don't believe in pursuing that Christians should pursue an MMA career.
Cage fighting.
Cage fighting. Wow.
I absolutely love.
Okay, hold on,
Plan.
Benz. I'm sorry. I forgot to turn my volume on again. I'm having a real problem with this. Hold on. So what I said is a lot of
Okay.
people are having a question. They don't want to hear about this because they say, well, what about just self-defense? What about discipline? Is such a good discipline? And they're saying, I don't want to hear that. And a few people are saying, oh, I don't want to hear that, but I'm willing to look into it and pray about it. And then there's a few people that want to hear and know more, right? And so you asked about the self-defense. So go ahead about that.
Yeah, so I had this idea, like, what about when someone wants to do something bad to you? They come up to you. What about learning self-defense just to defend yourself against just when someone comes to attack you, to defend yourself against them, to be able to just defense, just do defense. And like the idea is women, a lot of times that's something that I know this is something they offer at colleges a lot, for women to learn self-defense, just so that they can protect themselves when they're out somewhere in the dark, and they need a way to be able to defend themselves. I think that is. I don't know the specifics. I haven't watched those videos. I haven't read the article yet. But in my view, just being able to defend yourself is something you would want to be able to do. So I will go off of that.
Yes. So I think that you could learn some pretty good defensive tactics in a few days. I don't think you need years of Taekwondo or karate or anything like that. And I don't think you need to rank up in your, to evolve in your martial arts skills in order to have good self-defense, right? You could learn that in a couple of weeks, maybe even a few days. And you could practice those on a regular basis where you're not channeling what's known as the chi. And the chi is the spiritual force for strength and power in order to evolve in martial arts skills. And as you go up, now again, this is going to be like, I'm going to tell you guys, it's going to be like any other secret society. The people who are white belts, yellow belts, green belts, maybe even blue belts and brown belts and whatever other orange belts and some, depending on what you are into, and red belts, maybe they don't know, and maybe even first degree black belts. But as you get into it, I guarantee you're probably starting to know around the green belt. I remember I got a green belt in Taekwondo. I remember hearing about that. But a lot of it is, we're going to channel this, what's called the chi, and that's going to be a spiritual force that brings strength and power in order to advance in the martial arts skills and get to the next level. You will not make it to a black belt and not have heard about this. You will not. And they will tell you that this comes originally from a spiritual thing. Yes, there was training in battle, but what we know now that Jesus has come, when Jesus, in my opinion, when Jesus came and said, turn the other cheek and love your neighbor and do all these other things, the battle is a spiritual battle now. It was a physical battle before Jesus died for our sins. But now we have a spiritual battle, and I know that there are people here that understand what that means as far as a spiritual battle, that we are fighting forces, right, that are not of flesh and blood. We're fighting demonic battles. And again, what I've said before is, yes, it can teach discipline. Yes, it can be very good for self-defense, but discipline and self-defense can come from other more positive things. You don't need to look to these things to do it, in my opinion, because why would I want, again, and I keep saying this because it makes the most sense to me, I can invite demons into my life, in my house, and I can do it knowingly and then pray them away. But man, it becomes pretty hard to clean up that mess when you keep bringing it in. It gets harder and harder and more exhausting. I'd rather keep my house clean. What do you think, Benz?
Sorry about that. I'm here. Yeah, so I have trouble cleaning up my barracks room sometimes. Every time we go to PT, I come back and I have to clean up the mess I made when I tracked in all the dirt into my room. So yeah, I definitely know the notion of having to clean your room every day versus just keeping it clean. And so the same concept goes with your body. Your body is the temple. Why have to sit there and clean it up every day when you could just, keep it clean all the time?
Right, and there's also, I'm not going to make you guys watch any more videos, but there's also another video that this was an ex-martial artist, but he said being your own God, it teaches a philosophy of being your own God, and that exercising revenge on others is yours, not the Lord's. And also, I'm not going to show the video because the guy talked about Gog and Magog, and I haven't done a lot of research into that yet, but I don't know if you're reaching two particular demons or not, but this person was a black belt. I don't know what degree. And I'm sure if I read it more thoroughly, he says how far he gets, because it's kind of long and you got to read into it. But it was easy for me to see is it's the same idea that happens in all these other things, that you're in charge, not Jesus. It's New Age. It's the same New Age doctrines. And you don't have to like it and you don't have to believe it. But again, if it's bringing demonic activity into your life and it's making you the one that is in charge, I don't think it's a good idea. I just say don't bother with it. There's other things.
Yeah, I'm with that too. I think that's it's a good way to be.
And okay, so when you said that there's different self-defense too, let's say you like you said in the Army, that you came in and they tell you got to do this and you got to learn these moves, and maybe they're helpful because you're going into actual physical battle. There's no doubt about that. My question is, do they tell you to find your chi?
Yeah. So I think with MACP, there is no, it's a straight logical point of view. So going off of that, it's like science. Like there is no, according to mainstream science, there is no spirituality. They don't allow it to exist, even though it does exist. But so the same rules apply to like the MACP. There's no spirituality to it. It's all movements. It's doing exercises before you actually do the actual beginning training. You do a set of exercises for like 3 days, 4 days, maybe a week. Some rough exercises. But yeah, they build you up, and then you start learning the basic moves. And then I know that's level 1. There's level 2, 3, and 4. And as far as I'm tracking, there's no spirituality to it. There's no learning chi. It's just learning movements. However, once you get at level 1, you're learning grappling, how to get into different positions, how to move yourself. Level 2, I think you start to learn strikes, where you're actually striking. And then Level 3 gets more into it. Level 4 gets even further into it. I know with with me having fibromyalgia, or whatever it is I have, I was having difficulty trying to remember just the level 1 stuff. So it was always difficult for me to go through it because I keep forgetting what I was supposed to do for one thing or another, and so that made it difficult. But I know that with level 1, it's just basic grappling, pretty much basic defense, how to defend yourself. But once you go into like level 2, you're actually going on attack.
Yeah, so we're probably having buffering. Your daughter says she's going to bed, and it's getting really windy here. It's coming and going, so it's just doing like it has done in the past, where it's bad for a minute, then goes good, and then bad for a minute. So people say it's just horrible. We may have to end it, but yeah, we've got a couple people who say, I learned this was this, and I learned it was that, and you guys are gonna do that. You're gonna say that you learned it this way, and you learned it that way, and you guys can keep doing that. You can keep saying that the way you learned it is fine, and it works for you. And I'm gonna tell you, it doesn't matter, right? If I'm right or wrong in that instance, you're not even willing to look at it and go, maybe I should think about this. Maybe I should say, am I dealing with two spirits of Gog and Magog, or am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I looking at this the right way? And should I be willing to say, oh, maybe I'm not, or pray about it? Because what I do is trust me, I've had some bad days with some stuff I love or have been very much enjoyed doing, and I've had to say, I don't know that I can do those things anymore. For one, Halloween. I was huge into Halloween, guys. Huge all my life. Loved it. And I even sometimes go, man, it just like kind of stinks that like Halloween is not something I can just enjoy the way I did. But guess what? I'd rather know the truth about Halloween and, again, not bring crap into my house I don't need to clean up every day. We're already having to cleanse ourselves from the flesh anyway. The flesh is already our problem. You know, the flesh is already the issue that we have to deal with, because it talks about that in the Bible all the time, that don't be of the flesh, be a body of Christ. So knowing that, I don't want to continue to drag this murk and muck into my soul and have to cast it out on a day. Like you said, it's exhausting. Now there's routine. You can say, okay, I'm in the routine of casting out demons every day because I really want to do my taekwondo or fine. And I hope it's working really well. Maybe it is, because God is actually bigger than all things, right? But at the same time, I get exhausted. I have these days where I don't want to clean. And then what happens? You know, that's how I'm looking at it.
So yeah, you're right about that. I get exhausted some days just going to work. Just going to work, coming back home. I just get exhausted. And so I know, I understand this idea that, you know, just doing, like, I hear people talk about energy manipulation, like the Qigong, the Falun Gong stuff. I think that it does take a toll on us. Like we can do it, but it still causes some exhaustion. It's taxing on us, and I don't know. I know there's some other stuff going on that can cause us to go into exhaustion as well, but it's more like we don't have to be doing that. We don't have to do it. There's someone out there who's willing to do all that for us and more, and willing to fight our battles for us and stand up for us. We just have to look to him and ask him for help, and ask him to do it for us. And he'll, like we can do a lot of stuff, but he said to look to him for help and for guidance. So I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, and that's what I would recommend is I tell people, okay, you know what? I mean, this is my opinion, but pray about it. At least be willing to pray about it. But again, now I love this PDF because it talks about a stumbling block. Now, we are told in the Bible But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come. But woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. And so what they're saying there is, if you are going to be a stumbling block for somebody and get in the way and point them to something that they shouldn't be pointed to, and I guarantee you that's what they're doing in these places by saying, direct the chi and have the chi energy. And the guy that's in here saying, well, I was taught that it was just like a force. Exactly, it's a spiritual force. And he said, like dark and light, and I'm like, exactly, Satan and Jesus. It's a spiritual force for strength and power in order to evolve in the martial arts skills up to black belt and beyond in the different degrees. And look at Bruce Lee, who had movies like Enter the Dragon. And you look at Gog and Magog, and that's in Revelation with the dragon too.
Yeah. There's you look at it, there's so much going on. There's so much going on behind the scenes that we've just been oblivious to for so long. We've been asleep. We haven't been paying attention. And I think part of the whole thing that these guys do is that the whole thing is lull us to sleep, make us fall asleep, make us think that they're not pulling the wool over our eyes. They're not singing a lullaby to put us to sleep. And then they just do it, and they put us to sleep. When we fall asleep, we don't know what's going on. We're not paying attention. We're just blindly going on with our life, and then generations go through that, and pretty soon no one knows what's happening, what's going on, and then they can do whatever they want. The magician has hid himself, made people believe he doesn't exist, and now he's running around running amok, and people are just now starting to wake up. They're starting to realize he does exist. The magicians running around have been doing things the whole time, but now no one's waking up fast enough, I don't think. There's a lot of people waking up. I mean, Q started that process off, waking people up. Even though whatever it may be, it did wake a lot of people up. But even that's got people enthralled into it. And there's more to wake up to. There's still more to wake up to. And it's going along, but I think the work will be done whether man helps it along or not. God will make sure it gets done, regardless who does it. And so I think we just trust in God, and it will happen.
That is exactly true. And again, it's easy to say, God is bigger. And I always remind people, I agree that God is bigger. Go ahead and do that. Just be very, very careful. This article also talks about the karate yell. Now, what some people don't seem to realize is, Revel's mad because he has great respect for Bruce Lee. If you don't want to hear it, man, it doesn't matter who Bruce Lee was and what he did and what he is. The truth is the truth, guys. And if you don't want to have ears to hear that, then it's on you, man, not me. Because I said something about Bruce Lee, you get offended and you leave an offense. So, hold on, I want to say something real quick. I was personally in go. All right, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I think on the subject of Bruce Lee, so I think that I don't think he fully knew what it was. I don't think that's part of the whole thing that they do. They lull us asleep, make us think that what they're even having us do is not a bad thing, when in fact some of the times it could be some of the worst things we could do. Like Bruce Lee, he was seemed to be a pretty cool guy. There's something about a curse on his family line. I don't know what that's all about. But Brandon Lee, poor guy. But Bruce Lee, he had that. Was he the one who had the 1-inch punch, or was that?
Yes,
was that
he could do impossible feats that no other man could do. He could do physically impossible feats for a man.
He mentioned. I remember seeing something he stated where like the amount of stuff he could lift. If he just lifted something with his arm, he could only lift a certain amount of weight. But if he lifted something with his arm while using chi to help himself lift it, he could lift like what, 4 times the amount of weight or something like that. And yeah, there's definitely some power there, but is that something we want to have in our life? Like, is that the effects it can have? We don't really know what we're doing. We don't always know what we're doing. We could be opening doorways and stuff and letting things in that we don't understand. We have no training on it. No one's here to teach us how to do that. Just people here who say, hey, do this. And we don't know their intentions, and they don't know exactly what they're doing either. We've been taught trust in God. I mean, this whole world works a certain way, and there's certain people who know how to tap into it. But we've also been told, don't worry about that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know about that's attached to doing stuff with that. Just trust in God, and He will take care of it. It's something, someone brought that up to me too, is this idea of working magic. When I was going to that crystal shop, and I was looking around and trying to figure out what was happening, I went to a meeting where they had a whole bunch of witches meeting, right? So my experiences are kind of interesting. So it was a whole bunch of witches meeting and having a meeting talking about stuff, discussing stuff. And so they were asking, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I just want to know what's going on. I don't really know anything about this. I want to see stuff from the other side, see what's going on. And so they were talking about some of the stuff I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't understand it. I wasn't in it, so I didn't know the types of things they were talking about. With the wordage they were using, I didn't understand it all. But they were talking about all sorts of things, and we were discussing this idea of like how, like what magic is, how it works, and so I put in my 2 cents that like in the LDS church, we refer to some of this as like the priesthood. Like we have the ability to do stuff like that when but we pray for it through God, through Jesus Christ, that a person could be healed. But it's like it's kind of the same thing when I think about it. But we were discussing what the nature is, and it was kind of like there's karma involved in this stuff. There's kind of, as some people call it, the wheel. The wheel keeps turning, and things happen. And I've heard it referred to as like the tapestry of fate, kind of. You're plucking strings, and you don't know what's going to happen down the tapestry. You pluck some strings here, makes things happen here. Further down, something else happens, and you don't really know what all the effect is going to be. And so I was saying, I had this idea, and I don't know if it's correct or not, but they were talking, and several people were talking about this idea that if you do something, there's an effect, there's consequences to everything you do. And that's something we believe in our church too, is there's consequences to everything you do. And they were saying sometimes you could ask for, say, money or something like that, but someone is going to lose out. So someone somewhere might lose money and you would gain it. And depending on how you did things, it could have an effect on you or someone else. There would be a consequence. There could be a backlash. Something bad could happen to you in response to that. And my point of view was, if you trust in God, if you ask God for it and He deems it worthy a thing to give to you, then He will take care of all the things in the middle. Like all the things that could go wrong, he knows what they all are, and he knows how to weave the tapestry himself. And so he could take care of it all. And that was my point of view. It was to turn to God and have him take care of it. And that was just a thought I'd throw in there. It's kind of long, sorry.
No, I appreciate it, because otherwise I was getting all riled up. So it's good that you interrupted me, because I was going to say, and I'm not riled up, but I was getting there. I was going to say that the yell, right? I was in Taekwondo. I got to my green belt, and they employ that to intend to instill fear, right? So again, it's not just, if it was intended to instill fear by doing the yell, how is that any kind of self-defense? That's not a self-defense at that point. That's I'm going to, you're not fighting a bear where you got to like get big if it's a black bear and pretend you're dead if it's a grizzly, right? It's, it's different. But again, you could say it's for self-defense, and that's fine. There's lots of self-defense classes that can teach you this stuff without having to get into the spirit of, a force for this strength, like we were talking about with the chi. And another thing is if you go to the MMA stuff, they tell you they're harnessing anger, and they're beating the crap out of each other, guys. They're beating the crap out of each other. There's no way that Jesus would come to earth now and say, that's cool, let's go to an MMA fight. That's all you even have to ask yourself. Would Jesus be like, yeah, I like this Taekwondo, karate, MMA stuff. That's cool. Like, yeah, guys, let's go together. Sorry to sound like the old, what would Jesus do thing, like it or hate it, but what would he do? Would he sit there and be like, that's fine? Like, it's what you want, so go ahead. Oh, wait, would Jesus say that, or would Satan say that? Come on now. All right.
No, you're right. You're right.
So this guy asked the same questions that we did. Does the end really justify the means, or did the means determine the end? And I don't want to mess with it. If I can find enough good reasons not to mess with it, and I don't care who Bruce Lee was. If you're so hard up for Bruce Lee, then you're whatever, guys. Like, if you gotta make that the. Here's the thing is, if you got to stop taking red pills because your favorite person is your favorite person and you cannot handle that favorite person being a bad person, then I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, that's a problem. That's a big problem.
I got a perfect example on that.
Please.
So when I was growing up, I was learning about science, I was learning about astronomy, I was learning all these people, who they were, what they did. And then, they were all my heroes. And then I found out just recently it was all lies, all of it. Einstein, the famous greats for astronomy, all of them were part of the club, and we're not in it. And now I'm looking back and I'm saying, oh my goodness, I was lied to by all these people. And I thought they were my heroes. They were the people I followed. They were the people I looked to for inspiration. Even though a lot of them were dead, it didn't matter. These were the guys that told us how our world was. And to find out that none of it was true, that none of it was real, that these guys have been lying the whole time, that not only were they lying, but they were part of a club that sacrifices children. I mean, to realize that, I was like, oh my goodness, what the heck did I just stumble across? All my heroes have basically just vanished. They were all thieves in the night. They were all just liars. That's all they ever did. The whole thing was a farce. The whole thing was a lie. And that's the same way as like someone following movies, looking at Bruce Lee and saying, he was one of the greatest martial arts people ever. And he was a great movie star too. Well, we know about the movies now. We know about the actors. We know what they're doing. How much was Bruce Lee involved in this stuff? Did he know? Was he part of it? Did he even know what he was doing with the chi? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But we know what the movie stars, what the whole movie thing is, and we know about China. And so I look at it and say, you know what, this is one of those things where you you sit there and you look at it and you say, okay, I need to step back from this. This is too crazy. That I'm thinking something's wrong here. That's kind of how I feel. It's just there's all the stuff we thought about before, all the heroes we had, all our famous greats. They're all now suspect. They've all been thrown into question. We have to go back and look and find out if any of them were speaking truth at all, ever. Because now it looks like that might not be the case. They may have been lying to us all, deceiving us all, part of this club that we're not in. There's too many questions about these people to sit there and say, hey, I'm going to follow this guy for all eternity because he was a favorite of mine. Well, when you find out who your greats are, who they really are, that's when you start really saying, oh my goodness, what did I do? Anyways, back to you.
I'm sorry, finish what you were saying.
No, that was it.
Well, what you said was perfect because it didn't even occur to me to say that. Yeah, he worked in Hollywood, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep picking on Rebel because he's the one that said it, but he said, oh, he's Asian. Like that gives him an excuse not to know Jesus. He lived in America and married an American woman, and he was in American Hollywood movies, lots of them. So that's not an excuse. It's in our DNA. Jesus Christ and the Lord God and the Holy Spirit all is one when we were created because Jesus was there in our creation, guys. He wasn't waiting to be created because he wasn't created. He was there in our creation and of all creation. And it was put into our DNA to know Jesus and to know God in some facet. That doesn't mean you go to hell because you didn't exactly know who Jesus was, especially if it was before the time of Jesus, right? Come on, guys. Like, again, I'm not judging where somebody goes, but I've never been one to sit here and sugarcoat anything for anybody, but I'm getting a little bit more on fire with the Lord because it's like what they want to do is they want to take so many red pills until it becomes a personal offense, And they take that personal offense and they blame you like he just said, and he said, this is dumb and I'm out of here. This isn't dumb. This is intelligent conversation. We're asking questions and it's okay. He doesn't have to like it. Nobody has to like it. You can all disagree with me. I'm going to go where God leads me. I'm going to ask God for the truth. And that's all I want you guys to do. Hey, Jim, it's actually me and Benz. But I just want you guys to ask the Lord. Just say, Lord, what do you think about this? Can you tell me, God? And ask in earnest. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's all we can really do. There's at this point, now that we've learned what we've learned, there's too much at stake to take things personally. I mean, now that I've learned about the serpent seed, the club we're not part of, all the greats that I used to admire, that they were all liars. Yeah, now that I've learned that, there's too much stake to take this personally. It's too much. There's too much going on. We need to open our mind as to what we're really seeing, what's happening around us. There's just too much that we take offense to it, and that's part of what Satan wants.
Absolutely.
It brings up the
it's called The
thing.
Bait of Satan. Thank you. There is a book called The Bait of Satan, and it is being offended because that is exactly who I used to be. I was an angry, offended person. And you guys want to, we want to sit here and go left, right, left, right. By the way, I was a right-wing Republican forever, and I was the most angry, offended person out there. You could have triggered me on Instagram. You could have triggered me on Facebook. Okay, so I'm telling you from experience, I have been one of the most, I'm like Paul, like I am one of the worst of these. I'm not like Paul in the other awesome ways. I'm like Paul when I'm like, I'm the worst about this. God help me. And it is the bait of Satan to be offended.
Yeah, one of the things we actually talk about in our church was like being easily offended. It's like it was wrong. For us, it was wrong to be easily offended. That was a wrong thing. To sit there and have something happen and then feel like you just have been offended. for something simple, a harmless slight, and to feel offended, that was we found that to be really wrong. That was a bad thing, and they actually talked about that. That was one of the things we were counseled on, not being easily offended. Like quite often, that was the thing, because it can lead to so many problems. It can lead to so many things going wrong. Just by being easily offended, because it leads to hate. It leads to it can lead to many other sins. Just that little thing alone can lead to so much other stuff, and so we're taught to just let things go. Like understand what's going on, but let it go and don't let it bother you. Don't be offended by things. And so when someone would bring something up that we didn't want to talk about, we just kind of guide things a different way. But we wouldn't sit there and be offended, because we know where that would lead.
Well, especially for you being, and you're talking the Mormon religion. So if anyone doesn't know, Benz comes from the Mormon religion. He's asking good questions about scripture, though. It's amazing, asking great questions that most people would never ask coming to the Bible at their first time. But what is another thing about, for Mormons, again, to go door to door, they'd have a really rough life if they got offended by all those slams in the face. And I'm sure there's a lot of them for the missionaries.
Oh, yeah. A lot of them will just smile. When that happens, they'll smile. They'll kind of smile to themselves, just like they weren't ready for it. that's yes. Kind of what they'll say to them. They'll say to themselves, oh, okay, they weren't ready for it. The slam in the face means they weren't ready for it. We need to go to the next house. So
yes,
that's something they would do. I mean, I get this feeling like listening to the stuff that Zen was talking about. Some of these things that he talked about, that's some advanced stuff in there, and they have the new Aramaic translations. That now that they have those out, some of that stuff that it talks about, we talk about in our church, and I wonder if this really did come from the Masons, how much knowledge do the Masons have?
All of it.
How much info do they have?
A lot.
Yeah, because if that came from, think about it. If it came from them and then they just slightly twisted it around a bit and then turned it into a religion, and now you got all these people following it. If it came from them, how much do they really have? Think about that. A lot of this stuff that Zen Garcia is pulling out of the Aramaic Targum, a lot of that is in our church. Stuff that has never been talked about, stuff that's never been heard before. A lot of it's in our church. And so I sit there and I think, wait a minute, they're talking about this, Zen's talking about this stuff, but then our church says the same thing. But then there's this other part that's like a key bit of information. In our church, it's different. And that's how you would know what's true or not. The idea of the serpent seed. That's why I keep going back to the serpent seed, because it's kind of one of those keys. It's one of those keys that makes things fit and makes things click.
Yep.
Because once you understand what the serpent seed is, you can then understand who's doing what and who belongs to what and how things are, because now you look at the what was it, the Book of Mormon and the whole Mormon faith, and the LDS faith talks about the serpents. It doesn't really talk about the serpent seed. It talks about that the lineage of Cain was black. A lot of people don't know that because the idea was that they had turned away from the light. They had turned away from knowledge. They had turned away from the light, and they had chosen darkness and ignorance. And so God had made them appear the way that they had made their choice. And so a lot of people will say that that's racism. I don't
Yeah.
see it as racism, just because the idea behind it is the light of knowledge and truth and the darkness of ignorance. That's just plain and simple that way. It's not a racism thing. It's not, oh, I hate you. It's hey, this is your choice. This is what you've made, and this is how everyone should know what you made your choice as, by the color of your skin. Now, this goes all the way back to, like, according to this, it goes back to Cain and Abel. So it goes back to Cain.
Yeah.
But if the whole thing isn't true, and we've learned today, like nowadays, that there's a huge amount of hatred by the Masonic, certain parts of the Masonic order against black people, then there's a thing about, for some reason, they have decided to label black people as the bad guys in the LDS church. Now, a lot of people will not look at that and say that's racism, or they won't look at it as a type of racism, but they also won't look at, in fact, the people were about if the people who are of African descent, or the people who are black today, back in the 70s, they said if they truly are part of like Cain's lineage, shouldn't we do something to try to help them and save them? And so the people made a rallying cry to the church leadership that we shouldn't keep these people, because before that, before the 70s, the 60s or 70s, before that, black people weren't allowed in the LDS church. That's why you see mostly white people in the LDS church, because they weren't allowed back then. Now they are, because they petitioned the leadership to do something about allowing them in. And so they changed, I guess he said he did a prayer. He prayed about it and asked that God would allow them in. And so God did they said he did something to change things for them so that they could be allowed in now. I forget what it was. And I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know if
this is craziness. Like, I'm thinking about it and I'm like,
Yeah.
I hear you, but I'm like,
Yeah.
this is craziness. Like, what the, I mean,
Yeah. So
I'm
now,
like, these-
yes. So now
the
I'm
higher
looking
ups,
at it.
what really happened is the higher ups got together and they're like, oh, we better let the black people in or they're going to have
Yeah,
a fit.
yeah, exactly. Because think about this: the higher ups that are in control,
Yeah.
the sheep who are
Yep.
asleep, who don't know what's
Yep.
going on.
Yep.
You know, we better let them in, or they'll wake
Yep.
up.
Yep,
We
exactly.
can't let
Yep.
them wake up.
So, oh, hey, everybody,
So,
it's great.
yeah.
God came to me and said, I'm going to change this. Like, God doesn't change who
Yeah,
he is.
yeah.
He doesn't change who he is.
Yeah.
But okay.
So I'm wondering if maybe. Oh gosh, yeah. So if he just said that just to allow people in, to keep the people asleep,
Yep.
then I mean that you could easily see that happening. You
Yep.
could easily see that happening. Once you're awake, was it
Yep.
realize, realize.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, so now black people are allowed into our church.
Glory to God's changing.
Because the people, yes, because the people wanted it to be so. And so the church leadership made it happen and changed it.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, when you look upon this, and after I spoke to you about that, I think about that episode, after I spoke to you on that episode, we were talked about our church, between now and then, I have spoken to a buddy of mine that was in the same location. Like, we lived nearby. A bunch of us lived nearby. We had there was a complex called like the University Meadows, and we call it the Mormon Meadows because so many Mormons live there. And so it was a little apartment complex, but a lot of us lived there. There was like a upstairs that was for like 2 people or something like that. We'd stick 5 people in there. We're Mormons. We'd pack everyone in, like one little house and share the rent. It had like a $1,000 rent for like $200 per person.
That's exactly. That makes a lot of sense to me too.
Yeah. It was really cheap, and it was pretty fun, you know. But like one thing he said was he had actually left the church, and like he left 3 years ago. And so this was like basically right when I got to Fort Bliss, like a year after I got to Fort Bliss. He had actually left the church. I didn't know about this. And I saw him on Facebook. I just saw him on some post somewhere, and I was like, oh, hey, I know this guy. And so I started chatting with him. He told me about that there were so many lies going on. So I sent him a few videos and said, hey, check these out. You know, tell me what you think. And he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but he said he was interested in watching some stuff. So he had left because he said he woke up to what was going on. Even now, they're starting to change things again in the church leadership. They're changing. It's like they're changing doctrine and changing history.
For the times, because God changes for the times.
Yep.
I mean, no, he doesn't. God doesn't change for the times. God has always been the same God, and you can see that from the garden to now, that the same problems to Babylon, to, if you believe in Atlantis, and I do, you know, and look at Cain and Abel. I mean, come on, you could go through the whole Bible, and it's the same problems.
You know where Atlantis is, right? Has anyone showed you where Atlantis is?
I've heard different speculations, but you tell me yours.
Okay, the prevailing theory right now amongst a lot of people is, and the people who are actually observing and actually know stuff, but that can't get their own TV show or whatever, they actually know where it is. The people who all have their own TV show and are pointing at all these different places, they probably know where it is and they won't tell. They're probably not allowed to say. But Atlantis is the Reboot structure. It's the Reboot structure in Mauritania. It's also known as the Eye of Africa. It's a little kind of eye-shaped, kind of like an ovalish eye-shaped piece with a little, what looks like a little eye inside of it. It's a little circle, but it's in northern Mauritania. It's called the Reboot structure. There are several people who have pointed to it and said, hey, this is exactly where Plato said it was. Everyone keeps pointing other places, the ocean, like a continent. It's exactly where Plato said it was. Exactly. Like you can look at all the landmarks and point exactly to where the landmarks say it should be, based on the instructions, or where the instructions say it should be based on the landmarks. The Reboot structure, I think it's
Mauritania.
Northern Mauritania. I think it's spelled Richat.
Oh, okay.
MAU.
Yeah. I got it.
Okay, yeah, it's Northern Mauritania. You'll find it on there. You'll see it. It shows up pretty significantly. But you can see all the mud flows when you look at it from like Google Earth. You can see all the mud flow that flowed by it. And in fact, Plato talks about when they said that it got flooded, somehow, like the Sahara Desert used to be an ocean. And Atlantis was surrounded by water at the time. Mm-hmm. Somehow there was some sort of raising up of the land on the eastern side. Well, actually all around. But on the eastern side, the land rose up faster, I guess, and it created a massive, massive wave. All that water flowed straight over Atlantis, and it flooded the whole place. Just wiped the whole thing out. And all that mud just flowed over the straits. And it just, you can see, do you see it? Have you looked at it?
I'm looking at the map of it, and then I'm looking up that other word you mentioned.
The recot structure?
Yeah. I'm looking.
Okay, so I'm looking at YouTube
Yeah,
right
I'm
now.
looking.
Ah, there it is. You see it?
Yeah, I have it on. Yep.
Yeah. You can see all the mud flows, how they go right by it. Yeah, it's that little circular thing in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a bunch of spirals.
Interesting.
Or
I've never heard
it kind
of
of
this.
looks like a spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
that's Atlantis right there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it used to be surrounded by water. When they look at it, they say it's when they actually went and analyzed it, they said it was like a volcanic bubble kind of thing that like it was fluctuating, and it kept it kept going up and down and creating like these circular parts. Thank you for the thanks for serving.
Yep. They're good people.
it's,
These are good people. Our people.
Thank you. Yeah, Carter Hall says Eye of Africa. That's what they call it. But yeah, it's the recot structure. It's Atlantis. It's exactly where they said it was going to be. And they said there's that guy from Roger from Mud Fossil University. Now he still believes the Earth is round, but don't put that against him. But he pulls out a lot of interesting information. He's found like fossilized remains of like reptilian heads and stuff, reptilian people. Found one where a guy was wearing some sort of military jacket, and he's a reptilian, his hands folded in his lap, and he's turned to stone. And he's wearing a jacket that looks like a military style jacket, kind of something you would see like someone in the service wear, but from a whole different time. And it could just be a regular jacket, but he's brought up a whole bunch of stuff. He analyzes the giant remains and shows how they're all like, all these giants are biological, but they're all just turned to stone, and you can actually dig into there. You can find the feet from the Titans and stuff. Those rock formations that just stick straight up into the sky, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's just the weathering of the ground around them." And there's just these rocks that are just there, and so the ground made this weird weathering pattern. No, those are legs sticking out of the ground. You can literally dig down in the feet area, and you'll find gold.
Oh, let's go there.
Because,
Oh, it does look like an eye.
yeah.
Look at this picture. It actually looks like an eye. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's a trip.
Yeah. So some of these like legs and stuff, apparently you can dig down, and someone actually went and did that. Someone said, "Oh, hey, you know what? This guy's got a good idea. Let's go try it out." And they went and dug into one of these like feet, the leg formations down at the foot, and they found gold. They actually struck gold. And so, yeah. So this guy knows what he's talking about, but he looks at the landscape.
Yeah.
Just looking at the landscape.
This is
see all
something I'm
this
going to take a note.
biology.
Yeah, I'm going to take note. I'm going to make a note of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so he says like he's a geologist, a biologist, and a what else? Historian, I guess. He does a lot of stuff. He's a pretty smart guy. He looks into all sorts of stuff, and he finds just looking at the landscape, you can see. Yeah, that does look like an eye. I'm looking at the YouTube that's a few seconds, about a minute behind.
Well, if it is a spiral, it could be the Fibonacci golden ratio.
Yeah.
maybe
could
even if
be
it's
that.
spiral. I mean, I know that there's pictures showing it as just rings, but there's another thing kind of showing that Fibonacci thing. I'm just throwing it out there. Don't know what that means. Don't know if it means anything.
Oh, it's a Fibonacci sequence. So it's you start at like 0, 1, and then or it's like you start at 1, and then you count. You put the next number added to the next number. So it's 1, and then just 1 again, and then 1 plus 1 equals 2.
Yeah.
2 plus 1 equals 3. 3 plus 2 equals 5.
Yeah, that's the
5
Fib-
plus 3 equals 8. Yeah,
Right.
so that's a Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
And that's a thing you find in nature. That's just straight nature.
Yep. Everything in nature.
So, yeah, everything follows a Fibonacci sequence. It's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, you know what's also interesting is there's something called the anti-Fibonacci. And the funny thing about the thing about Fibonacci, now I'm going to go over some people's heads, but just bear with me. The thing about Fibonacci is it goes in a certain order, right? Like you just said, it goes in a certain order with the Fibonacci sequence. There's something called anti-Fibonacci, and you can run it through a computer program. You can set up the program for it, and somebody's going to go, computer. Anyway, computers are based on what God gave us, God's numbers, God's coding, God's understanding of things. And so, anyway, you could do the anti-Fibonacci, which takes negative numbers, to try to make the golden ratio. And what's really interesting is they don't have to go in that order. You can do them completely out of order and still run it the same way you would. It's still the same. It's a method, guys. It's the way you add things in the Fibonacci is added for that way for a reason, and you can set a program to subtract it the same way. And the reason they set the computer program was to run hundreds of thousands of numbers through this Fibonacci sequence, but with a negative. I don't know if it was related to antimatter or trying to find antimatter, but I think it was, and they were trying to get an anti-Fibonacci, but guess what? It came out with the same ratio, even out of order. So they didn't have to do it 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, 9, all that stuff, or however it goes after that. They didn't have to do it that way, and that was the most amazing thing, was not only did it come up with the same ratio, but it did it even out of the order that they believed it had to go.